Guys, today what we're going to talk about are two things: EPU, emergency overrides. There is sometimes confusion between the two. The first thing we're going to talk about is the emergency power unit, or the EPU. When we'd want to use the EPU is if we had total engine failure. So what does that mean? You're operating your aerial. Somehow, mechanically, your engine shut down. Lost oil pressure, it locked up, you're dead in the water. The aerial is fully extended. So the question is, one is I got to get guys out of harm's way, or I got to bring that aerial down and bed it so I can get it towed and fixed, right? So what do? On your unit, you have something called an emergency power unit, which is basically a small motor that powers your hydraulic system. All the steps are the same. The only difference is, instead of you have a big motor powering your aerial, you have a smaller motor now powering your aerial. And with that being said, it's very important for you guys to understand your run times for your EPU. It's completely different between this unit, and that unit. So the expectation for you guys is, first, one, obviously know how to use it, and two, know how long to run it, because it makes sense. A smaller engine powering an aerial, it's going to heat up, and if you don't know the runtime, you could possibly damage that. So let's go over how this is going to work. We're going to start the engine. Everything's going to be fine. You guys are going to do a quick or rapid stabilization, stabilize it, and you're going to bring the aerial out of the cradle. In this case, we only want to do about 15 degrees because we can replicate a problem that way. Once we brought the aerial out of the cradle, I'm going to shut down the engine and act like there's been an engine failure for you, okay? And on your aerial, you'll notice there's two locations that you can find your emergency power unit switch. The first one is at the tailboard, okay? The second switch is up here at the pedestal. Those two switches power one motor. So what does that mean? What does that help you out with? If this switch was broken, for example, that switch up there will power the same motor, and vice versa. Why is that important? Well, we know things happen, things break, and if I've got to lower my aerial and stow my aerial, but that switch is broken, I can have someone down here power it up and lower your aerial down, okay? What I also want you to think about is when you're lowering the aerial, it's going to be super slow, okay? And let's say your run time is only 7 minutes with a 30-minute cool down. Well, plan accordingly, okay? Don't think it's going to happen in 5 or 10 minutes. It may take a period of an hour to finally get everything stowed because it operates slowly. The other thing is, with the EPU, everything's the same. So what do I mean? You lose your engine, in theory, you should be able to hit that switch up there and lower your aerial down. If it's not working, the first step that I would do is go to your cab and check and make sure your master switch is on, your ignition switch is on, your PTO is on, and your aerial master are on. All four of those switches need to be on for you to operate your EPU. If one of those switches got clicked off, your EPU will not operate, okay? The other thing is, to lower your aerial, you still need to be in aerial mode. To lower and put away your stabilizers, or to stow away your stabilizers, you need to be in stabilizer mode. We're going to test that. Okay, so Roger, why don't you go ahead and power it up. Go ahead and go into aerial master and aerial PTO. These guys have set up the aerial to where good stable base. They have 4 green lights. They're doing their operation where the aerial in this case is just 15 degrees. Now what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to create a failure, which means what? Main engine failure for whatever reason. So Roger, go ahead and just shut the engine down. And what do we want to have on? 4 switches, right? Aerial master, aerial PTO, ignition, and master switch, okay? And Murphy, why don't you go ahead and jump up there? Okay, so we lost our engine during an operation. Roger, go ahead and put all 4 switches on for me. Aerial master, aerial PTO, master switch, and ignition switch. So that's what I would check. So Roger is checking to make sure those 4 switches are on. Okay, so all engine failure, Roger verified those 4 switches are on. We have to stow the aerial now, or get people out of harm's way with main engine failure. We need to employ now the EPU. Notice we have Murphy up there is going to do that for us. His switch looks exactly like this. Okay, and so what he's going to do is he's going to hit that EPU switch, go ahead and hit the EPU switch and start to lower the aerial, and you might want to get a shot of that aerial being loaded or lowered down. Everybody watch and see how slow that EPU operates. Okay, EPU's being functioned, and here's what we would do in a testing environment. We'll ask you, Murphy, for example, we know this EPU, you can stop. This EPU will operate 30 minutes of runtime, 30 minutes of cool down time. I will need to voice that when I'm operating my EPU for skills testing. For you, it may be different. It may be 7 minutes for 30 or 7 minutes for 15. You need to research in your owner's manual what that will be. Now, we're gonna say, for all intents and purposes, this is a continual operation. Murphy, go ahead and bed that all the way down. So we're gonna try to put this aerial up in EPU mode. And you see, it's pretty easy for one guy to do this, okay? It's pretty easy. We're gonna have you guys do the other part of the EPU switch. Go ahead, stop for a sec. Now, go ahead and, what we're gonna do is I want you to lift it out of the cradle here in a second, but we're gonna say his EPU switch is broke on the pedestal, but he needs to move the aerial. So Norman, why don't you go ahead and hit that toggle switch over here. Go ahead and lift the aerial up just a little. It's lifting, go ahead and lower it down. So that shows you that both switches operate the same motor. Does everybody see that? Are there any questions on that? Tell them when you're done. Done, okay. So now we stow the aerial. Guys, just because we're taping, I don't want this to take away from you guys being involved. I don't want to talk to a bunch of cardboard cutouts, okay? So have some life, ask me a question, I don't care. If you don't understand, we're gonna stop. Yes, go ahead.
So the life of these motors,
yes.
I've heard like it's very hard to replace, so
yes.
testing them all the time can bring some wear and tear.
That's a good point. He's asking, testing the motors and using them over and every day and all that other stuff, right?
Right, they're hard to replace.
Yes.
So the apparatus could be out for an extended amount of time.
Absolutely.
To replace those or not get replaced at all.
Absolutely. So here's my reply to that. We want you to be comfortable using them. And when you operate an EPU to test it, to either to train yourself or to test it, do it for very short periods of time. I would say 20, 30 minutes at a time. You can just raise the aerial out of the cradle, shut your engine down, lower it down 5 or 10 degrees. That's enough. That's like 10 seconds of operation. 1, I know how to use it. 2, I know it's working. Okay? Now, that answers your question. So operation, short periods of time, it's not a problem. It's just like anything else. You want to use something, be comfortable. Now, fully stow your aerial every time or whatever, and I know you're not going to do that. We're going to shy away. But we do want this part of your weekly check, because if it's not working, it's kind of nice to know it's not working. Would you agree? Okay, so test it out, short periods of time. Answer your question? Okay, now, we've stowed the aerial using the EPU. Now what we want to do is we say, hey, we got still what, 4 stabilizers out. We want to raise and stow our stabilizers. But we're not going to do that because Norman's a smart guy. He says, why are we going to wear this motor out for just, I can lift it up a little bit and know it works. Would you agree? So let's now show you how to use the EPU to stow a stabilizer. And all we're going to do is we're going to lift this back stabilizer up just a 1/4 inch, because this will help me transition into overrides. So how we do that? Real easy, right? You would take it and put it in stabilizer mode. Light comes on. Guys, same steps, just like anything else. Pull the pin for me, Murphy. And what I want you to do is lift back left just a 1/4 inch. And you guys can see, and everybody get a rep on that if you need to get a rep. Go ahead and have it come up just a 1/4 inch so we can see a little air between there. Good enough. All right, guys, would you say, and if you need to get a rep and get your hands and figure that out, please put your hands on it. What we're gonna encourage you to do is definitely go back to ladder 17, quint 1, wherever, and put your hands on, because every override switch looks a little different. Run times are different. Where it's located may be different, okay? Are there any questions on how you could stow now your stabilizers using your EPU? Any questions in general on EPU usage? You guys look like somebody shot your cat. This guy fucking sucks teaching. I hate this guy.
No, I had that one question about run times, because my manual said 30-30.
30 for 30.
I
That's a long time.
30, it is.
Right.
But here's the deal, think about it. It's air cooled, all right? So 30 minutes of continuous usage. In some cases, it may be using some gravity to help release hydraulic stuff, okay? So it's not necessarily lifting and all this other stuff. It may be in your stabilizers for all intents and purposes. Use according to manufacturer. All right, so now we talked about EPU usage and hitting your switch and running your EPU. Just be once again familiar with your run times. I will say this, the EPU, if you have a complete hydraulic failure, if it means you lost a hydraulic hose, the EPU will not help you. Does that make sense? If you lose a hydraulic, one of your pistons blows out a seal, hydraulic hose, you lose a hydraulic hose, your EPU will not help you, okay? It's a motor driving the hydraulic system. It is not a separate hydraulic system. That's what I wanted to say. Any questions on that? Go ahead.
Electrical failure.
If you have electrical failure, then it's not gonna power that motor. If you remember, it's an electrical motor that's air cooled, that's gonna lower the device. You have an electrical failure, now you may be dead in the water, okay?
But does this run on the 12-volt batteries that are on the side?
Yes,
Run
yes,
on those batteries?
yes.
So for some reason, these batteries just aren't gonna work.
No bueno,
EPU
you're
not
done,
work.
yes. Or if you drive through a puddle of water and electrical malfunctioning, computer malfunctioning, you know, electrical does no likey water, you may be messed up EPUs.
Those are the two.
Yes, yes, okay. Any questions on that? All right, so that being said, we are gonna go now into emergency overrides. Okay, so emergency overrides, squirrel, EPU in one compartment. Let's talk about overrides in another compartment. Overrides are, for all intents and purposes, for you to do something that the system may not want to do. In fact, it has safety interlocks that prevent you from doing these things. Okay, but just like with any piece of equipment or any device, there may be failures. So let me paint you a picture on some examples. Let's say, for example, you come out with all your stabilizers, you come down with all your stabilizers, and you have what you think should be 4 green lights here. But guess what? One of your interlocks is not working, meaning this should be a green light. This should be a stable base. Even though we created an unstable base, I'm saying that's stable now because I want to use my overrides to see if they work. We're calling that good, all right? And you can verify that's good, but this says it's not good. So what do we do? Because we still have to raise the aerial and do our operation, whether it's a rescue, master stream operations, go to a roof, etc. Norman, your Captain Vokey, is gonna say, I wanna go to the roof, and you're saying, crap, I do not have 4 green lights, but I know it's a good base. How can I do that? Well, let's do that, all right? Go ahead and start the engine. Make sure aerial master, aerial PTO. And as he's doing that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna open this compartment and we're gonna show that there are 2 overrides here that we wanna look at. One is aerial and one is stabilizer. So if you need to get a picture of that, you can probably peek in there. Okay, still in stabilizer mode. So what we want to do, Captain's telling me, hey, I need to get to the roof, I need to get to the tower. The system is not going to let me go into aerial mode. Why is that? Because the interlock is jamming me up. It's broke, but I know that's a good stable base. I'm confident in that stable base, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Norman, I want you to go up and try to raise the aerial. And we know he can't because we don't have 4 green lights, but we will. All right, so go ahead and try to raise the aerial. And what you're going to do, help me out with your name, I always forget it, brother. Ray?
Renee.
Renee.
Rios.
Renee. Okay, thank you, Renee. Renee's going to go in here and he sees aerial override and it's pull to do it. Can you raise it? It's not, he can't do it. So he needs his buddy, Rios, to come down here. And what I want you to do is you'll tell him once you pull the plunger, I got it pulled, and you'll be able to raise the aerial. Go ahead and do that, sir. Now, you'll notice that the aerial's going to clear the cradle. There's a toggle switch on the cradle, okay? You can let go now. Once that aerial clears that toggle switch, Norman, you have complete usage of your aerial. See, show him. You do not have to maintain active control of that override once you clear the cradle. Here's the important point, guys. You are doing something the system, what? Tried to prevent you to do. So now it's kind of carte blanche for you guys to what? Be very cautious and confident that you have a stable base here because it's letting you do anything. Okay, and in case you didn't have a stable base and you came onto this side, what's going to happen? No mas. Do you understand what he did? Take a look and you can see what he did. So now he can operate by doing that override. Does that make sense? Okay? If Norman was going to bring it back and put it in the cradle, once he hit that toggle switch, you see that toggle switch I'm looking at? If you look in the nest of the cradle, there's a little pokey thing out. Once he hits contact with that, it's going to lock him down. That's the trigger point. Okay? Then you'll have to do the override again. Okay, here's another example when we would need to use override. You're operating your aerial. You started out with 4 green lights, good stable base, but because your quint, water shifted in the tank, something became unstable because you came over all the way right. One of your back stabilizers came off the ground a little bit. Whatever scenario happens, you lose a green light during operation of your aerial. Somehow, what is going to happen once you lose a stabilizer during operation, meaning you lose a green light? What's going to happen, Norman? It's going to cold dead in the water, right? And let's look at how that will look. Murphy was operating. He loses his left rear stabilizer for whatever reason. Now what we're going to do, if I was to switch over, can I come over here and try to lower that stabilizer down? Rios, let's see if we can do that. Will it let me do that? Don't do anything right now. Go ahead. I'm talking to Murphy. Is it letting you do anything? So he's dead in the water. So how we fix that is when Roger's going to come over here, pull the plunger that says stabilizer override. Go ahead and find your green light.
4 green lights.
4 green lights. Now what Roger will do to help him out, flip his switch back over. In theory, he really didn't even need to switch his switch back over. He could have done it with it still in the aerial mode because he would have overridden anything. Does that make sense? Okay? What you did is basically fix the problem because the interlock stopped you cold in the tracks. Does that make sense to you? You can see it. So, the question is do I need to go into aerial, from aerial mode to stabilizer mode to do my override with the stabilizers? The answer is no. You can stay in aerial mode, do your stabilizer override, and fix your stabilizer if you want to, okay? Because you remember, you're overriding safety interlocks in general. Yes, sir?
Does that work vice versa? If I'm in stabilizer mode, I want to override the aerial, so I have to...
So let's try that. So let's create a problem first. The first problem I want to create to do what you're asking is to lift this and get no green light, okay? So go ahead and do that. So you'll have to do what? He can stay in aerial mode. Go ahead and do override and lift it up just a 1/4 inch. You lost your light? Good. Murphy, go up there, try to move the aerial. Tell me if this answers your question. Can you move the aerial?
Yeah.
Okay, it's because why? Because we have already overridden it from the previous thing. So what I want you to do is come down all the way to hit that toggle switch to reset the system, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're still in the override mode of aerials. We need to kick in the interlocks, correct. Now, to answer your question, what I'm gonna do once he trips that, what do you think I'm gonna do?
Put in stabilizer mode. It's true.
Okay, but you answer your question is you want to say, put it in stabilizer mode, now to use and move the aerial, correct? So let's try that. So I'm in stabilizer mode, hit aerial override. Go ahead and try to lift it up. It's moving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's overriding these interlocks and that interlock. I'm going to do that so I don't have to talk over to BP. Did that answer your question, Rios?
Yeah, it did. It did. I thought it was a different system. That just kind of like a mechanical switch so that the hydraulic fluid goes somewhere else. So I didn't figure just because of this area.
Remember, it's not necessarily rerouting hydraulic fluid. What is it doing? It's bypassing safety features safety interlocks so you can execute duties. These interlocks may either be faulty, broke, whatever, so you can what? Move your aerial, move a stabilizer, okay? Now, are there any questions you have, Murphy? All right, so let's talk about another example that you may need to use your overrides. Let's say, for example, you did what you call a full set, or you have four green lights. Your stabilizers are all the way out and all the way down. But somehow, even though you have 4 green lights, let's say on this side, somehow your interlocks are saying this is a short jack side. They're short jacks for whatever reason. So what do you know is going to happen on a short jack side if it's this side? Is the aerial going to go all the way over here? Absolutely not. That's right, because what? We create tipping, right? So your aerial should stop. That's what you'll see. You're going to be operating, all of a sudden you stop, and you're like, what's going on here? I have a full set on that side. Your interlocks are saying to you that's a short jack side. So you're going to have to come in what? There's safety interlocks that's left and right that are just where Murphy's leg is. There's a turntable just under the turntable, actually right to your right. There's a little peekaboo tray. We'll go take a picture of that, and you'll see left rotation, right rotation. And we're going to practice that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create an actual short jack side, for real short jack side, and show how those work. So what we've created now is a for real short jack side. The reason we want to do this is we're going to try the override on the left-hand side to show if you had a pseudo short jack side, I would say, where the interlocks are saying this is a short jack side when you know for real it's not. So we have to actually do the real thing to test those overrides. So what we're going to do is Murphy's up there. He's going to be able to raise the aerial. Rios will switch him over to aerial mode. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead and operate. He'll bring the aerial up, and he'll try to bring it over as far left as the aerial left that the aerial will let him. And it should stop him a little shy of that, and we know it'll do that because of those safety interlocks. Okay, so we see now he's stopped. That's awesome, okay? It's doing what it's supposed to do. Now the question is, if you had for real, you know you're fully stabilized, but you gotta move on this direction and it's not letting you. Let's jump up there and let's see what Murphy's gonna have to do with his buddy Rios to try to fix this problem. The aerial has stopped us on the short jack side. What we're gonna do is just test this out. So, for real, because if we go over too far, we will tip, as you guys know. So what we want to do is just test it out. And how we're going to do that is Rios is going to activate his left rotation override and tell his buddy it's activated. Murphy's just going to ever so slightly 1 inch or 2 inches over to the left to show you that we can do that. Does everybody understand? All right, when you guys are ready, go ahead and do that.
It's activated, dude.
Do you guys see the movement? Did you for real see the movement? Are you good? Now, let's test this theory, because we know when we hit the override before on an aerial override, it pretty much lets you do whatever you can do. Guess what? This has to be activated for you to do something, and will test me out and that. Can you do anything without him activating that? Absolutely not. Right? It can, because why? Because this is a really still good side. Left? You have to do that. Is there any questions on that?
Is there a point that you can pass that you can actually have free range of motion?
What do you mean?
Pass
Like,
the side without holding the override?
I do not know that question. Here's what I'm going to tell you, just based on this limited test that we do, is this plunger has to be fully activated through that entire motion over here, because remember that interlock is saying this is a short jack side, and it's going to keep it a short jack side. There's not a point to where over here it's not short jack side anymore, right? It's good. But as it comes here to probably right around into this point is still short jack side because of what? The weight shift. So yes, after this point, you don't need it, don't need it, don't need it, don't need it, don't need it. Bam, I hit it. Then I have to activate it to come around to do a full rotation. I would suggest not to test that, okay? Just for whatever it's worth. Here's what I would do though. I would absolutely create a short jack side scenario just to test it for that inch or two to make sure.